Another player that hasn't been moved yet, but it's pretty much public at this point that he wants to be moved. My San Antonio Spurs and Marcus Aldridge. Kind of felt like this was gonna happen eventually, especially the way things have been going this season. Aldridge has been, especially recent games, playing more of a bench role. But anyway, Spurs and Aldridge have agreed to part ways as of right now, still on the roster. So Spurs looking to trade him. Apparently, there's a few teams interested. We still don't know exactly what teams. We can just kind of only speculate. Obviously, as a Spurs fan, and I think Spurs themselves trying to find a trade before the deadline, or else we're probably going to have to cut him. So I'll I'll just say this, and I'll kick it to you. In terms of Aldridge himself as a Spur, it worked out at first. It looked like it was really good at first, and I really don't blame Aldridge. I think I wouldn't. I can't say with 100% confidence he lived up to his contract. If I had to say, I would say he almost did, like 90, 85%, especially the first few years. Because I felt like, especially with the emergence of number two, it got to a point where, okay, he could have been Aldridge was going to be the number two guy, and number two is going to be our main focal point, which I think at first Aldridge didn't like, because remember there's that one off season where Pop had to take him out to dinner and because he wanted out, and then he remedied that situation. So and then also what didn't help Aldridge, in terms of his numbers going down, is just the league evolved. Like we kind of mentioned with Boogie Cousins a few episodes ago, and just some of these big men, you got to be able to, you got to be able to move and defend in space. You got to be able to shoot threes, and handle the ball a little bit. And Aldridge being so mid-range reliant, he did try to move out to the three this year. He did it okay, but it's just not what he built his game on, and especially when you're paying him that kind of money, it just doesn't make sense. And I feel like he wants to do more, and get the ball, get more looks, as opposed to what Spurs were doing, which is we're focusing on our young guys and or letting DeRozan handle the ball more, and Aldridge wasn't getting the looks and such as he wanted. But anyways, I'll let you go first. Any thoughts or or speculations on any teams that you think he might fit or go to?
I mean, the immediate super hype reactions from everybody online is that he'd go back to Portland, and I don't disagree. I think that Lillard, McCollum, all the other guys they have over there, I don't think that he necessarily changes the dynamic of that team. Obviously, it kind of depends on where he's at in his career. If he has that sort of Carmelo Anthony approach and he's more willing to take more of a back seat as opposed to what he was maybe used to in San Antonio, not necessarily that he was the focal point like you were talking about. He's slowly started to take less and less. But if he's okay with that and wanting to go out there and try and compete for a playoff team, and especially a team that he's familiar with, he can go back to Portland. I think he'd be a good fit there because they have good big men, but they also have big men who have struggled with injuries over the years. And I think that he just provides a unique skill set that they don't really have because none of their bigs are really that good at shooting at all from mid range or the 3 point line. So you add him in there. I think that that'd be a solid addition for them. Other than that, I think it just depends. If it's a trade, I think that really limits the options for a lot of teams because I'm not sure a lot of teams are going to be wanting to trade for him. It's sort of similar to the Blake Griffin and the Andre Drummond situations to where just because of the money they're making and the point where they're at in their careers, it doesn't feel like the trade market's really that hot. But if it's a buyout, I can see a lot of contenders wanting him. I don't know specifically, but I even know my Celtics maybe are interested on like a 1 year kind of deal, finish out the season because big man is our weak spot. So add an offensive guy like Aldridge in that spot to go along with the other guys. Maybe can teach some stuff, some post things to Robert Williams or something like that. Um, I don't know. I don't really know about a lot of other teams that would potentially be interested. I can't imagine the Nets would be because they already have a lot of stuff, at that big man spot committed with DeAndre Jordan, with Nick Claxton, with Blake Griffin now. So adding him just kind of seems a little bit redundant because once again doesn't improve their defense. Um, but yeah, I can't think of any other specific fits off the top of my head. Um, yeah, I mean that's pretty much what I got.
Um,
If he could shoot the three a little better, I feel like that would once again also open it to a lot more teams. Because I would think like maybe Milwaukee, but because he can't really shoot as well, it doesn't feel like he'd fit alongside Giannis as being the five option there. Uh, maybe Miami, but once again, there's just I don't know how he fits in that paint. Um, so I don't know. He's an interesting player because he has a lot of offensive tools, but I think his offensive skill set would fit into a very specific style of offense.
yeah, so I will agree on not, it is kind of hard to find a fit for him. So I thought about it. In terms of so best fit in my opinion, maybe most realistic option would maybe be the Charlotte Hornets, just because they really don't have any versatile. I mean, their bigs are only like Bismack Biyombo and Cody Zeller, not any guys that can really stretch the floor. And right now, as of right now, they're the seventh seed, so maybe they're looking to at least they probably won't win the championship this year, but maybe make some noise in the playoffs so they can get their young guys like Lamelo and Devontae Graham, because I don't imagine those two and Gordon Hayward. I imagine we'll be getting them. And I think, sorry, I forgot to add, I think another hard thing, like you kind of alluded to, was what's the price going to be if the Spurs do trade him, and what is Spurs asking for? Because I think regardless, he's on one. This is the last year of his current contract, even if they do trade him.
Okay.
So this is only going to be a rental. And then yeah, so it's just a matter of teams. I guess the only leverage Spurs have is, hey, you can trade for him so that you can make sure you get him, and like the Lakers or some other team doesn't get him. But yeah, I imagine I don't know exactly what picks they'll go for. I mean, if we get a first for him, that'd be great. But who knows? Another team, maybe Toronto. Once again, not really sure what we'd ask for as the Spurs, but I know they have guys like Norman Powell. Maybe they move on from him. Once again, I'm not sure. Another place was maybe Atlanta, because I imagine Pop's not going to trade him to the West. I imagine they wouldn't want to do that, especially to most of these teams that do need him. Probably don't want to see him again. Um, so yeah, and regardless, I think there's more fits in the East. But yeah, Atlanta could be an option. A good, you know, maybe they, you know, I'm not saying we get John Collins, but maybe some sort of we get John Collins or sort of 3-team deal, move so that because it seems like John Collins. Don't forget he kind of wants an extension, probably wants out. So maybe he can come to San Antonio or vice versa. Um, shoot, there's one more team. I'm blanking, but and then in terms of the West, I mean, I know Porzingis is apparently Dallas has sniffed around. I'm not saying we could do a straight up Aldridge for Porzingis trade, but I mean, I wouldn't mind sending like I don't know, like a Patty Mills or something if we can get Porzingis. And I know Pop would love that, but I feel like that would be hard for us as a Spurs team to swing. But the only other team was Sacramento. That was the other team because they're kind of out of the playoff race for now. They're like 5 games behind. They don't really have a marquee big. Bagley's kind of wanted out. Not that I really want Bagley, but I mean, I'll take Bagley as opposed to Aldridge. A young guy to maybe mold, or maybe like a first or a second. Regardless, those are the only real destinations I see outside of maybe I'm not sure if LA's interested or like the Clippers. But once again, I'm not sure if Pop's going to want to give him to one of those teams that we're probably going to see in the playoffs. But regardless, um,
What salary is he making? Do you know his contract?
I have to see. Oh, yeah, then
Because another thought that you bring up Sacramento, a team that maybe has contracts that they don't want to commit to. They maybe want to go get a guy like Aldridge, who's a 1-year deal. They can match salaries. They get out from under the commitment of a 3-year deal or something, and then they can just cut Aldridge if it was going to be a buyout anyway. Um, so that could be an option. I think that opens the door to some more teams that are not playoff teams, like you said, the Kings, who they have other guys who maybe they want to get rid of. That an Aldridge trade can facilitate some salary cap freedom in the future. I don't know what team specifically, but that just made me think of that.
yeah, and actually that brings a good point. Like apparently, maybe Harrison Barnes, we kind of need. I mean, Kellen Johnson's been a solid four for us, but he's still like in his second year, as opposed to Harrison Barnes, a little more of a polished product, can play the four, something like that. Um, and then yeah, I think so. All just making his base salary is 24 million for this year, and once again, he's unrestricted free agent after this year. Um, so I'm not sure how exactly the details, because I do see it says 15% trade kicker, so I'm not sure if we owe him 15% more. I don't know. But yeah, I think only other team I want to throw in there was the Celtics. Once again, not really sure what y'all would give us. Once again, probably wouldn't be much. Maybe a
I
second,
I think
maybe a
we're
player, a prospect, but
For the Celtics, I feel like it'd have to be at a buyout because if they did a player, we're talking like Kemba Walker
Yeah.
when it comes to
Well,
contracts.
don't
Because
you
the
have
only
the
other
trade exception too? I think I read somewhere that
we
y'all could.
do, but I just to be real, I can't imagine that Danny would let Gordon Hayward leave instead of getting Miles Turner and Doug McDermott. He would let him leave for the trade exception, and then use pretty much the whole thing on the Marcus Aldridge for 1 year. I If Danny does that, I will not forgive him.
Well, he might not have any. I'm not sure if the trade exception does it help you. I don't know the money exactly. Does it
So
help you going forward if you don't
normally
use it?
normally the way a trade exception works is if you get it in the off season, you have to use it during that year, and it does you don't like get anything from it the next year because it doesn't give you more cap space. All it does is it counts as like a player's contract that you were trading so you can match it with the other guys, right? You can't add contracts to it. So unfortunately, like for Bradley Beal, he's $100,000 more than the trade exception, so we can't absorb him into that, and you can't throw like another cheap contract on top of it to like equal it. That contract has to fully be absorbed into it. Same with Porzingis, he's like 900K over, so that that rules out certain players because of that aspect. But because of the COVID stuff, they've changed it to where the exception for teams that they got this year can be used in this next off season. So that's why I think, yeah, I'm not sure if the Celtics actually use it at the trade deadline this year, because I think unless there's like a key piece that they'd really want that they think can help them contend for the finals like right now this year, or they could get at a cheaper price now than they would be able to in the off season, that they could get like a John Collins or something where they could extend out into the future. I assume they'd probably wait for that trade exception in the off season, and try to use that for teams that are trying to sell off some pieces, because it's probably the most valuable then. But yeah, I mean they're going to use it. I just can't see them using it on a LaMarcus Aldridge because once again, if they're going to get a guy who's a 1 year deal, it just doesn't feel worth using the trade exception unless he instantly like makes them a lot better. And that's why I feel like maybe throw a Victor Oladipo or something in there to where you feel like it's a big time piece. Which LaMarcus, he's a great player, but I don't feel like he elevates them necessarily in that way.
Yeah. Only other team I want to mention is possibly the Bulls because and maybe because I think they've. I'm not sure what's been going on with Laurie Markkinen. I like him. Maybe a swap, something like that. Because I think Laurie's also on a contract here. I believe he's a restricted free agent, so I wouldn't mind that. Regardless, as a Spurs fan, obviously I want us to at least trade LaMarcus, get some sort of return back, as opposed to having to cut him. But regardless, just want to thank LaMarcus for his time, his effort. Unfortunately, it didn't work out, and that really wasn't all on him. Like I mentioned, the whole number two situation fell apart and kind of threw us all as through the whole Spurs organization kind of just in whack because that was supposed to be the next piece supposed to be number two and LaMarcus, and then we'll build around them, and that all just kind of came collapsed when we had to get rid of number two. Which once again, I know people say it was a bad trade. Obviously, in hindsight, it was a bad trade. I mean, I wish we could have waited and then because Jimmy Butler wanted to get traded that year, so maybe we could have gotten Jimmy Butler, some sort of three-way trade, and I think Jimmy would have loved San Antonio. I'm just saying. Anyway,
You will love Pop, I'll know that.
yeah, he would have. He would. I think he. I would. I would love to see that those two together because Jimmy's a goofy, funny guy, and Pop can be too. We see the interviews and stuff and the way he talks to to
I
his
just think
players.
because of Jimmy and all, coming off the Timberwolves stuff and all that, where he was not having it with guys who don't work hard. Pop is, he's just gonna tell you how it is, just like Jimmy would. So
Oh,
I think they'd mesh well.
yeah, and yeah, so anyways, hopefully Lamarcus goes somewhere, plays well for him, unless it's in the West. If he goes somewhere in the West, please don't play very well, especially against us. Knowing the Spurs, though, he's gonna end up in the West, and he's gonna ball out against us because that always happens in those revenge games. But yeah, I think that's gonna wrap it up for today. Went over a few those main topics.